everyone, good Wednesday evening. Welcome to Bowling with the Fef, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story live on our YouTube channel. I hope you're enjoying the content so far. Our 58th episode tonight. Plenty more back on the YouTube channel. If you look past videos, we've had all kinds of bowlers come on, tell their bowling stories. Everyone from local people here in northwestern Wisconsin to folks in Minnesota, New York, Iowa, all over the country, really. And it's been a pleasure getting to know some new folks in the sport of bowling, really the greatest sport of them all, as far as I'm concerned. Hey, I wanted to mention a few things before we start with our guest tonight. I had the pleasure of being on a show called Having a Catch last night. It's run by a friend of mine named Joe Buckles. And if you remember, if you've seen the show, this show often, you know that he was on episode 18. Joe is a big baseball guy, along with being a former junior bowler and a fan of the PBA. And he had me on the show yesterday. And really, to tell you the truth, most of what we talked about was bowling and was this show. So it was really cool to kind of go back in time a little bit. We've been friends since we were little kids, to talk about how we got into bowling, how we grew up in the sport, a little baseball, of course, because that's the premise of his show, it being on the Utopian Baseball Universe channel on YouTube and Facebook group. That's his invention, and it's a great group to be in if you're a fan of baseball. But I certainly appreciated him having me on for Having a Catch. That is available on YouTube right now as we sit here. So don't leave just yet, because we've got a great show ahead here. But after we're done here, feel free to check it out. Having a Catch on the Utopian Baseball Universe channel on YouTube and the corresponding group on Facebook. So coming up early in the new year, it'll be a little while before we have another interview. However, I have the privilege to do a little live streaming coming up on January 9th at Wagner's Lanes in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is really just down the road from me. But they have a tournament coming up that attracts amateurs from really all over the Midwest called the Chippewa Valley Match Games. It's going on January 8th and 9th. And the Chippewa Valley Match Games has a lot of history in this area. It goes back to, I believe, the 1960s. So here's the format. It starts out on the 8th with 2 qualifying squads, and they usually attract about 100 bowlers in total for this event. And last I heard, they were still looking for entries. So you start out with those 100. They take the top 24 into Sunday. And on Sunday, they go 12 more games of match play. And then from there, they determine the top 5. And that top 5 goes into a stepladder finals. And they determine a champion. We will be live streaming those stepladder finals coming up Sunday, January 9th. It's approximately 1 p.m. And I say approximately because there's really no telling exactly when the 12 match play games are going to end. And they tabulate all the scores. But I've been told around 1 o'clock in the afternoon is when we're going to have those stepladder finals. And I'm just tickled to be able to really have what I have described as a Chris Schinkel moment, being able to call a little bowling action play-by-play with some of the top amateurs in the Midwest. So be sure and join us. It'll be on this channel. I've already got an event scheduled. If you look under future live streams or upcoming live streams on the Bowling with the Fef channel, again, Sunday, January 9th at approximately 1 p.m. Central Time. Of course, if you have seen this show before, you know that Bowling with the Fef is brought to you by Chip Magnet Salsa. Chip Magnet Salsa, also made in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, distributing its quality salsas, relishes, and more to 38 states and Canada. If you live in Kansas City, you can find it at your local Hy-Vee store or natural grocers. And if it's not in your neighborhood store, ask for it by name, or you can go to chipmagnetsalsa.com to order today. Chip Magnet Salsa, raise your snack standards. So we have the pleasure of interviewing a guest tonight who is, I believe, a 4th generation Bowling with the Fef guest. Back in, months ago, I had Nicole DePaul, the head coach of Upper Iowa University, on. She challenged PWBA superstar Dasha Kovalova. Dasha came on and challenged former touring pro and three-time champ Charlie Tapp. And when Charlie came on, he challenged our guest tonight, who was available and willing to come on. His name is Paul Wolf. He comes to us from Kansas City, Leawood, Missouri, I should say. Is that actually a suburb?
Leawood, Kansas.
Okay, and that's a suburb of Kansas City.
Yes.
Yes. Paul is the head men's and women's coach of Avila University, which is a private school in the Kansas City area. Paul, welcome to Bowling with the Fef. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Fef. It's great to be here.
Yeah. This sounds like kind of a pretty somber time on campus right now, as the university reported the passing of Daryl Kronk over the weekend. He was just 46 years old. He was the head baseball coach, assistant athletic director. But tell me how he was involved in what you were doing when you arrived at the university.
Well, when I arrived at the university, I'm a brand new coach, had no idea about how anything works as far as starting up a new program. And we were assigned by our athletic director. There were two of us. One was a wrestling coach and myself, and we were both starting up brand new programs from the ground up. And we each got a mentor to help us with any questions we had, give us any advice. And mine was Daryl. And, he'd been there, I think he'd been there already 12 years, had an extensive background in collegiate baseball, and really helped me. He knew nothing about bowling, but, and I didn't know anything about running a collegiate program, but together we kind of figured it out. And he just gave me a lot of really helpful advice. Just a great guy. Never had I don't know anybody ever said a bad word about Daryl Kronk. Just a fantastic guy. And we're really hurting pretty bad.
Yeah. And my condolences to his friends and family, everyone who knew him. I know when a campus community, comes together for something like that, like I said, maybe somber, but hopefully his family will know the good ways and everybody, and how everybody there remembered him.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is a program that's brand new, first season, and we'll get into a little more about how that all came to be as we get through your bowling story. But tell us how it's going. Right now we're about halfway through the first season, right?
We're every tournament we learn something, and that was our goal this year. When we started, I had illusions of, hey, we're gonna, I'm gonna get these kids out there and we're just gonna kick ass, and that just did not happen. And we're really, my AD calls it our not our inaugural season, but it's kind of our I don't know what the correct word is, but it's our exhibition season. Mm-hmm. And so we're learning, and we're traveling, and we're getting used to all the travel and staying to these to the time limits and being where we're supposed to be. And it's been a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah. Like I said, halfway through the first season, I asked one of your competitors, but certainly a friend of yours for many years, Cheryl Kessler, about how you're doing. She told me that she thinks that you're doing a great job on your first year. She says being a good coach, is not all about bowling and your knowledge, but it seems it's about everything else, and that you're learning that. And, again, you're doing a great job, and that she's very proud of you. So tell me about, what that means to you to have the support of someone who, let's face it, is probably going to end up on the lanes at the same time as your teams, trying to do what you're trying to do, at the same time.
Oh, it's already happened. Well, first, let me say, Cheryl and I go back 40 years, at least. Cheryl, she doesn't like me telling the story, but Cheryl was my babysitter at one time. She's only I think 6 years older than I am, but she was mine and my brother's babysitter when we first moved to Kansas City. So I've known Cheryl longer than she's known her husband. So that means a lot coming from her. And from, my goal is to get to the point of where she's at, because she's really worked hard. She's been doing this for 12 years, and she's got her program to where they are, they're ranked every year. And it's following her is my goal. If I can get to where, to where she's at, then I think I've done a good job. But she's exactly right that coaching at the collegiate level at these small schools like Baker, like Avila, like Midland, like all these schools, it's way more than just coaching. It's You're a travel agent, you're a bus driver, you're making sure these kids are fed, making sure they're in their rooms, you're checking their grades, you're doing everything, making sure they're eligible. So it's a lot of work, and very little of it is actual on the lanes coaching. It's taking care of everything else.
Sure. And this season and last, for the ones who were in it, you kind of have to be an infectious disease expert along with all that.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of pandemic related challenges have you faced since you took the helm there?
Well, we bowled. Let's see, we bowled 4 tournaments, and we were set to go to the Leatherneck tournament in Quad Cities, that's a big one. That's a tier 1 tournament. We were ready to go, and I came down with COVID. Oh. And so I was, sick as a dog. I was around the men's team when I came down with it. So they all had to quarantine. And because I couldn't go, so the women's team just didn't go. And then the next week, we were supposed to go to St. Louis or St. Charles for the Missouri Baptist tournament. And again, I was still too sick to go. And so we missed 2 big tournaments. And I wasn't, for us missing a tier 1, it's not as big a deal as it is for a school like Baker or Wichita State, or, for us, for our first year, it's not that. To us, it's just another tournament. Yeah. But we really wanted to go to Missouri Baptist because it was an all NAIA tournament, and we're an NAIA school, and we wanted to see where we kind of stacked up against all those NAIA schools. And it was a different format. It was all Baker, and we wanted to see how we were going to do. And unfortunately, COVID hit us, and then COVID hit us again. When we were off for a week or so, right before finals, which was last week, or started on the 13th. My whole men's team, I had 2 of them get COVID again, and they were down. So the whole team was down. And then one of the girls got it, and she missed her flight going home. She's from San Francisco. And so she had to change her flight 3 times until she, felt better and was, symptom free and all that stuff. And so I had to take her to the airport, 3 days after she missed her flight. And so and I know we're not the only team going through it. Everybody's going through it. It just seems like our campus is just full of COVID right now. And it's demoralizing, kind of, because you think, at the start of the season, we thought, well, maybe we're on the other end of this, and it's not over, but it's better, and it's just kind of gotten worse, and it's just tough to deal with.
Yeah.
You just don't know from week to week what's going to happen.
Sure. And it's new territory for all of us, but being in that position that you're in and having these kids depend on you, what do you tell them to try and lift their spirits as you go through these waves of this horrible disease?
It's you just try and keep their spirits up, and I'm lucky with the kids that I have. If they're not on campus, they're bowling, they're practicing. Even if I'm not there, I've got a couple real freaks that will just bowl. If the bowling center's open, they're there bowling, which concerns me sometimes because I don't know if they're in class or not. But I'm very fortunate with the kids that I have. I've got a bunch of good kids. I on my girls team, I've got a couple girls that were already students at Avila before we started the team. And so they kind of knew, what it took academically to kind of stay in tune. And the rest are all freshmen, and so they're figuring it out. And I've got two from on the men's team, one from Southern Missouri, the other one is from Columbia, Missouri. So they're in the dorms, and then I've got three of the girls in the dorms. Like I said, the one from San Francisco. So, you deal with the homesick stuff and all those things, but they've all been really, really good about it and very mature about it too.
Yeah. Tell us about Avila, the greater university, because, from my vantage point, I know it's a private school. I know, it's in Kansas City, but that's about all I know, other than the fact that it's got a bowling program and a wrestling program, as you mentioned. So for, prospective, college students, what do they find at Avila?
At Avila, we have right around, I believe it's around 1,800 students. That includes grad students. We have our campus is fairly small. We're in the south end of Kansas City. We sit in a suburban neighborhood, so there's all these beautiful homes right next to our campus. It's a gorgeous campus. We're an NAI school. We have 13 or 16 NAI sports at Avila. We're known for our nursing program. We're known for our kinesiology program. We're known for our radiology program. It's just it's a very tight community. We have 4 dorms on campus. Football field, baseball field, softball field, basketball court. It's just a small little tight little campus that if you didn't, I have friends that have lived here their whole life, and I tell them that I coach at Avila, and they go, "Now where is that again?" And it's been, it's 2 miles from where I live, but it's been here in Kansas City for 106 years.
Oh.
Not at the location we're at now, but Avila has been a university here for over 100 years, but people don't know where it's at. And we're trying to, kind of get our name out there a little bit. And we haven't always been, we didn't have football until 2005, I think. We had basketball in the 70s, late 70s, but it started out as an all-girls school. And it was run by the nuns. And it was a nursing school is what it really was. And it just kind of progressed over the years, and now we're a fairly decent sized school, and we're the only school in Kansas City proper with a football team. We're the only one with a bowling team. We're the only one with a wrestling team in Kansas City right now. We're it, and there's a lot of little schools here in Kansas City.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's fantastic. Before you got to Avila, of course, you had decades in bowling, and I want to kind of get to your bowling story, and let's kind of start from the beginning. How did it all start for you in the sport of bowling?
Well, let's see. In 1972, my dad passed away. We were living in Mason City, Iowa, and my mom was let me go back even further than that. My mom was the ACUI champion in 1964, 63. She'll kill me if I don't know this, but so she was which was the precursor to what is now the singles championships, and the, what do they call it, the ITCs?
Yep.
Okay, so she was she was that champion, and like it might have been the first or second of all time, and she bowled at the University of Iowa. Okay. So she met my dad. They got married. My dad was from Mason City, Iowa. My dad got sick in 72, passed away, and then we moved to Kansas City because my dad's sisters lived here. So we moved to Kansas City to be around family, and she started bowling league at King Louis West. Have you ever heard of King Louis West?
I have not. I've heard
King
of
Louis
King Louis, of
West.
course.
King Louis West is where King Louis West is where the King Louis Open was played at in Kansas City for years and years and years. And she bowled league there and put me and my brother in juniors there. And I took to it. My brother lasted about 6 weeks, and I just took to it. And I was about 7 years old, 8 years old, maybe 7 years old. And so this was like 1974. Well, the next year the PBA comes, which was just the coolest thing ever. Yeah. And the PBA shows up, and Mark Roth makes the show, and that was his first win. That was his very first win ever.
The 299.
It's 299. I was there. I saw it. I was 9 years old. I'll never forget it. I saw it, and they had the long ball returns, overground ball returns. And Mark, if you ever watch the YouTube video of it, Mark beats the hell out of the ball returns on the right lane. Well, so I show up for league the next week. By God, I'm kicking the crap out of the ball returns on the right lane. And I was hooked ever since. And so when the PBA showed up every March, I got to skip school. I got to help Larry Lickstein load his truck and unload the truck. I always got a yellow dot out of the deal. That's how I got hooked. And after that, after I graduated high school, I thought I was smarter than everybody and decided to join the PBA instead of go to college. Actually, I wasn't offered, but it was suggested that I try to go to Wichita State. And Gordon had talked to me a couple times, and if I had gone to Wichita State instead of being a dummy in bowling regionals, I'd have bowled with Rick Steelsmith. I'd have bowled with Justin Romek. I'd have bowled with Dan Nadu. It was probably one of the worst decisions I ever made. But so I end up bowling regionals and did, caught a couple checks here and there, made a couple finals. But the Midwest region at the time was just brutal. At any time, there could be a dozen PBA champions bowling in the field. And not just any PBA champion. I mean, the Webbers were all there. Yep. Randy Lightfoot, Ron Williams, the Orfs. I mean, it was just brutal. The Midwest was just absolutely brutal. Well, I guess it was about 86. My mom decided to move to Las Vegas. And I thought, well, why not? I'm going to move out west. And I enrolled at UNLV to take some classes, and I was bowling on the side, and I was working at Samstown, working the counter at Samstown Bowling Center. And I bowled the Showboat Invitational and did okay, and bowled a couple other stops in 87 and decided I was going to go out on tour in 88. I bowled part of the summer of 87 and went out on tour in 88. Bowled 4 years, was horrible. I mean, I wasn't horrible, but it was nowhere near. I wasn't. Let's put it this way: I was not going to make a living bowling. This just wasn't going to happen throwing a bowling ball. By that time, I had met my wife in 1990, and we moved back to Vegas, and I went to work for the Showboat. My mom was working at the Showboat, and she was in sale, or she was tournament coordinator, whatever her job was. And but she had a pretty big job. She had to bring all the tournaments from California on the weekend tournaments into the Showboat. And that was a huge amount of money that was coming into the Showboat. So then I started working at the pro shop in the Showboat, which was the best experience of my life. If you ever experienced a high roller back in the day, there was nothing quite like it. And it was just insanity for 9 days. It was just crazy. You worked 12, 14-hour days. You did nothing but drill balls. And I drilled balls for some of the, guys you see today. I mean, Brad Angelo, Chris Barnes, Lonnie Wallachek, who else was bowling? Rudy Kazamakis or Rudy Revs.
Rudy Revs.
It was just, it was like a murderer's row of just great bowlers. Brian Kretzer, Brian Himmler. I mean, just unbelievable bowlers. And, you learned a lot. But back then, the technology wasn't like what it is today.
Yeah.
But it was, you learned a lot watching these guys, and you learned about action. And, it was just a great experience. And working in that pro shop, it was never, ever dull, ever. There was something going on at the showboat every week. If it wasn't the high roller, then the PBA was there, or the PBA seniors were there, or there was a regional there, or there was NABI, or the Wheelchair Association tournament. That was the wheelchair tournament was my favorite tournament. Those guys were they were the best. I have a great story about that. We used to have a couple kids that would come in and do all the grunt work in the pro shop. They do all the, shine the balls and sand the balls and put stuff away and work the register. And we had this one kid, and I said to him, look, these guys are going to roll into here. I said, they're going to have about 10 beers under them. They're not, they're staying at the hotel. They're not driving anywhere.
Right.
I said, and they're going to ask you to try on bowling shoes. I said, whatever you do, don't go get those bowling shoes. And he looks at me, he goes, okay. So here they come. Here's like 10 of them. And I know all of them. And I was working with Eric Handegard, the great John Handegard's son.
Oh.
And Daryl Smith, who is still out there working at, I think he's at the Orleans now. But so here they come. They're all rolling through there. And he goes, can I help you? And the first one says, yes, I'd like to see these in a size 12.
Oh, no.
There he goes, right in the back. He goes, I stop him. I go, what are you doing? He says, I'm getting him some shoes. I go, they're in wheelchairs. I said, they don't need bowling shoes. These guys they're howling. They're falling out of the chairs. We got another one. It was great.
Wow. When you were growing up in the game, I mean, you mentioned your mother, and she held leadership positions in the LPBT, which is now the PWBA, and she's a PWBA Hall of Famer. Tell me the impression that you had about her and her job and her status among the elite women in this sport. Was it something that you really considered, or was she just mom back then?
Well, I grew up on the women's tour. I spent when she was a bowler first. And so she bowled from 1973 up until 79 or 80. So she was out there full time, which back then full time was, I think they had 10 or 12 tournaments a year. It wasn't like, a tour. You'd have a bunch of tournaments in the summer, maybe one in the spring and one in the fall. So we spent our summers on the ladies tour, driving around, and none of the tournaments were that far. And so I grew up around, Pat Costello and Patty Costello and Judy Sutar. As a matter of fact, Judy Sutar's son and I are still very, very good friends to this day. When we lived in California, we lived 2 blocks from Roy, and Roy and I are still, I get texts from him all the time. We're still very close. Donna Adamek, so to me, they were just bowlers, they were just Virginia Norton. They were just people. So I really didn't put much into it until after she became the tournament director in 1980 or 81, whatever it was, and they had picked up bigger sponsors, and they were gone. She was gone a lot more. So as I grew older, I became more, I wouldn't say impressed by it, but it was more, I appreciated it more of how good these bowlers were, because they, if you ever got a chance to watch Donna Adamek bowl, she was one of the greatest of all time, as far as I'm concerned. She was phenomenal. But they're all great people too. They were just, like Virginia Norton and Vesma Grinfelds are still my aunts. I grew up with them. They'll always be my aunts. And Judy Sutar, I still call mom, whenever I see her. So it was a weird existence because we get in the car and we drive to Rockford. I was in Rockford, Illinois, every summer. I know Don Carter lanes like the back of my hand. And I told you earlier, I'd been to Wagner's, 30 some years ago. Some of these great bowling centers. Cranston, Rhode Island had a great bowling center. Beaverview Lanes in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, just some of these really cool old bowling centers. And I got to see, some history that, a lot of people never saw because they weren't televised back then either.
Right.
So I got to see some cool stuff. I saw the second female women's 800 ever shot. It was in Chicago, Illinois, and it was Virginia Norton. I think it was her last 3 games of match play, shot 808. And at the time, 818 was the all-time high. And she was the second 800 that a woman had ever shot. And, you don't realize how cool that is when it's happening, but that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, for sure. You, of course, mentioned, that you made the decision to go on tour. You didn't have the best of luck. Is that where you met Charlie? Was when you were touring?
No, actually, I met Charlie before I was touring. When he was just starting to date Marlis, he had come out to Vegas for the Samstown tournament, and they stayed at our house. And and that's where once you've been around Charlie for like 10 minutes, all you do is laugh. So I mean, it was I've always thought the world of Charlie, and I always will. He's just a great guy, and I love Marlis too. She's fantastic.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't known Charlie or talked to Charlie, we have a great episode with him on it, and that's where Paul was challenged for this one. I actually got in touch with Charlie right before showtime here. He told me to ask you about the tournament committee meeting and that you'll know which one he's talking about. Care to elaborate?
Yeah. I'll tell the story. He never tells the story, but I'll tell the story. Okay, so I had cashed the week before the Tucson tournament, and it was like 110 degrees or whatever. It's too hot to golf on Monday. So I'm in the bowling center. It's cool in there, and I'm watching my roommate bowl, who was Dennis Rakauskas. So I'm watching him bowl, and he's crossing with Ryan Schaefer and this other player. I'm not going to say his name.
Okay.
And this other player goes, and they were kind of hard, but Schaefer wasn't bowling. This was the Rabbit squad. So this is how long ago it was. Ryan Schaefer had to rabbit. That's how long ago it was. So this poor guy goes 2-8-10, 2-8-10, 2-4-8-10, 2-8-10, 2-8-10. But he gets over on the left lane and he leaves this last 2-8-10, and he spits the biggest loogie you'd ever seen. So Ryan Schaefer says to me, he says, "You going to turn him in?" He goes, "I'm not going to turn him in." He says, "I know the guy." He says, "But I go, well, I don't know the guy. I'll turn him in." He goes, "That's disgusting." So Johnny Campos is walking by because it was a Monday. Goose wasn't there. Harry Golden wasn't there. That's the day he took off. Okay. So Johnny Campos is walking by, and he says, I said to him, I go, "Look, this guy said," it goes, "just spit on the lane, just disgusting, Johnny writes him up, $100 fine, blah, blah, blah. So the guy appeals it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't go in front of the tournament committee until we're in Green Bay. So that's like 6 weeks later. Okay. This guy's still bowling. You can still bowl while you're appealing it. Mm-hmm. So I get called into the tournament committee meeting because I'm the guy who turned him in. And Goose is there, and it's like every great bowler of the 80s is sitting in there. I mean, it's George Pappas is in there, and Dave Sutar sitting there, and Mike Albee and Steve Cook, and I mean, just all these fantastic, bowlers. And so Goose says, young man, he says, and I'm like 23, 24 years old at the time. Goose says, well, can you tell us what happened? I said, well, he goes 2, 4, 8, 10, 2, 4, 8, 10, 2, 8, 10, 2, blah, 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 blah. I said, and then he spits on the lane. And Charlie, he was the assistant, uh, whatever. He was like the second guy in charge in the meeting. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me, he goes, young man, he says, do you mean to tell me that this guy goes 2, 8, 10, 2, 4, 8, 10, 2, 8, 10, 2, 4, 8, 10, 2, 8, 10, 2, 4, 8, 10, and you did not go down there and tell him to move to right? I said, that's all I got to say. I turned around, I walked out of the meeting.
Yeah.
And the guy ended up paying the fine.
Oh, wow. And you're not going to tell us who it was?
No, I can't. Can't do it. Not going to do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Charlie knows who it is.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. After Mark Roth passed, you shared a great story on Facebook about how you two became close while you were on tour, just not necessarily right away. Tell us how big a part of your life on tour he was.
Oh, well, just not mine, but everybody else that was, my age. You had 2 idols, 3 idols. If you're left-handed, you loved Earl, mm-hmm. or it was Marshall or Mark. Yeah, because those are the guys you saw on TV every week. And Mark was on a whole different level. Mark was a badass, and Marshall was a badass too, but in a different way. Mark was that brooding, don't mess with me, I'm here to do a job. Marshall was like a live wire. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of stayed away from Marshall. But Mark, man, he was something. I mean, I've always said the scariest thing I ever saw in bowling was Mark walk into your pair in match play with a ball under his arm, a towel over his shoulder, and a smoke hanging out of his mouth. And he knew, you knew it, he knew it, the crowd knew it, everybody knew it. He was going to kick your ass. It didn't, it was over. And he didn't like you. He didn't like the crowd. And he mostly hated the pins. And he was going to kill you. And when he got done, he'd kind of grunt at you, say nice bowling or whatever, and walk off. And but you knew when he was walking towards you, you were done. You just, and if you beat him, that was just a bonus.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that often.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, you said you had the challenges on tour. When do you ultimately decide, like you said, I'm not going to, make the money I need to make this worth my while anymore?
It was the summer of 1990, and I had bowled 5 consecutive weeks where I was 100 to 150 over every week, which, sounds okay, but it's, mm-hmm. and I'm sitting I'll never forget it. I'm in Buffalo, New York, and I'm sitting in the stands right behind the pair I'm on. And I'm like, what the hell do I got to do? And, the AMF rep was a guy named Jim Maylander, just the greatest guy. He's passed away a long time ago, but Maylander sits next to me and goes, what are you thinking? I said, well, I don't know what to think. He goes, I think you ought to go home. I said, you know what, Jim? I think you're right. And that was the last. Besides, I bowled one more U.S. Open, and I bowled the Showboat every year because it was right there. But that was the last time I bowled anything other than those tournaments. And it was the right decision. I could have stayed out there another year and beat my head up against the wall, but it was just. It wasn't fun anymore. When you're young and you're traveling and you're meeting all these people and you get to do what you love, it's great. But when you figure out that, this isn't going to happen for you, you got to find something else. And I was very fortunate to find something else.
Yeah. How about as far as competition after that? I mean, did you shoot the local tournaments around your home area, or was it a deal where you had to kind of put it aside for a while just for your own mental well-being?
I still bowled, everything in Vegas. I was not. I was pretty sure I was not going to get in a car and drive 200-300 miles to go bowl a regional. That just was not going to happen. But
Sure.
I bowled everything around town.
Yeah.
As long as I wasn't working, I was going to bowl.
Yeah.
And there were some great bowlers in Vegas at the time that the competition was very stiff.
Yeah. Tell me about, you said that you were working in the pro shop at the Showboat, and this is back when the Showboat was really in its heyday. How did, working on that side of the game, on the pro shop side of things, help you when it came to competing?
Well, at the Showboat, you had the advantage of number one, all the companies wanted you to throw their stuff, so you got equipment. You had no problem getting equipment. It was never an issue. But then you always had guys like, Bill Hall lived right across the street. One of the greatest coaches of all time. One of the greatest ball drillers of all time. He lived just right across the street, and he'd pop in, and you talk to him for a while, and Mo Pinnell would show up and spend a week there. Which if you knew Mo, that was either a great week or it was the longest week of your life. But you learned something. I guarantee you learned something. And Ron Hoppy would show up. I mean, just so many great coaches and great ball drillers and great bowlers would just stop in, and you just learned a lot. You learned a ton, and I was very fortunate that I worked with my stepdad, who was Dave Deacon, and he was a fantastic ball driller and very innovative, and so you learned a lot from him. Now he didn't give it up real easy. You had to pry it out of him, but you learned a ton from him. And you always had working with Eric Handegard, so you had John Handegard hanging out there. Well, come on, there was no one more analytical than John Handegard. I mean, if you wanted to know something right down to the nth degree, John was your man. I mean, he you could get a whole lesson in 5 minutes from that guy.
Yeah.
So you just meet all great people. I mean, hell, Betty Morris worked there. So we were around Betty Morris every day. There were just unbelievable people that would just pop in and spend the day with you. It was great.
Yeah. Being around all those huge figures in the game, is that part of what inspired you to become a coach yourself?
No. Um, what uh, what inspired me to become a coach was my wife. When the job was offered to me, I had no intention of taking it. I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. Think I'm going to, start this program from the ground up, and come on. Who wants to do that? And I mean, because it's a ton of work, and my AD will tell you the same thing. It's a lot of work to start a program, any program from the ground up. It's hard, and I wasn't going to take it. And my wife said, you've been in this game a long time and you've taken a lot. She says, it's time for you to give back. And that kind of hit home. And I said, okay, let's do this. And I called up my buddy, Steve Klemkin at Storm. And I said, Steve, what would you do? He goes, you're nuts. He goes, why wouldn't you do this? He says, there's nothing better than collegiate bowling. He says, it's so much fun. And so I called the AD back and I said, I'd like to come in for an interview. And I went in for an interview. I gave him my resume and went in for a 2-hour interview. And I think I had the job within 3 or 4 days or something like that. Probably because nobody else applied for it. But it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. It's so fulfilling. And it's not just about the bowling. It's about turning these kids into adults and getting them on the road to having successful careers and just watching them grow. That's what's really cool. I'm a decent coach. I'm not a great coach. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not a great coach. I'm a great mentor. And I think that's far more important.
Yeah.
The bowling will happen. It's going to happen. And, whether we like it or not. You're going to throw a strike. Somebody's striking, and we're not going to finish last. I guarantee you that we're not going to finish last. And especially this year. Now, next year we better not finish last. But it's more about the kids than it is about succeeding in high scores. And I think once we get established more, that thinking's probably going to change. But I'm more concerned about after 4 years, are these better people?
Yeah, that's true. The team concept on the university's announcement that you were taking over the program, you had said we will always emphasize team because that's what this is. It's a team, not an individual sport. And for so many kids, it's been played at an individual level. And so what we're here for is to teach you how to be a cohesive team, which sounds great. But how is that taught?
It's communication. It's all about communication. And when you're bowling individually, you're not talking to anybody. At that level. On the PBA tour, you're talking to your ball rep or you're talking to whoever. But as a junior bowler, you're not talking to anybody that's giving you. Your parents may give you the right, the positive input and all that stuff, but you need the team to talk to each other. And that's what I try to emphasize. If you're going to make a move, let's all talk about it and see where is that the right move you want to make? Do you want to switch balls? Is that the right ball you want to go to? It needs to be a team communication effort. And that's what I'm trying to instill with both the men's and women's is, you have to talk to each other or you won't be successful.
Sure. Tell me how that is for you, balancing your time between a men's team and a women's team like that.
Well, this year, I'm very fortunate that Mike Soroka is my assistant coach, and he's also the manager of where we practice at Aaron's Family Fun Center. Wait, quick plug. There we are. Aaron's Family Fun Center.
Oh, there you go.
And he, when I did this, when this whole thing started is that our athletic director, Sean, opened up, went on Google and found the first bowling center that he could find. And it was Aaron's Family Fun Center, started with an A. So it's right there. And he found out that it wasn't very far from campus. So he went to the bowling center and he said to Mike, he says, we'd like to, use your place as a practice center. Are you interested in coaching? And Mike went, I'm not, but I know a guy. And, and Mike used to work for me when I had my pro shop in North Kansas City. Mike worked for me for 5 years. Huh. And so he calls me up. He says, you interested? And that's when I said, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. And he kind of talked me into it. My wife talked me into it. And Sean, that's how it all came back around was they found the bowling center first and then they found a coach. So, where are we going with this? I forgot what the original question was.
That's okay. You know what? It escapes me too at this point. But as far as that center, give me a lay of the land there, because a center can mean a lot of things. It can mean 8 lanes. It can mean 100 lanes. But what do they do for your team at Aaron's that that really helps you out?
Oh man, well, Aaron's is a 38 lane center. Mm-hmm. 32 is dedicated for open play and league. There are 6 lanes that are closed off, kind of like a party boutique type of situation. 6 lanes. It's got its own bar in there. It's got the whole thing. And Mike gave us those 6 lanes, and those are our practice lanes. And we've got the newest Kegel machine. We've got, I don't know, the head mechanic's got, 60 patterns he's got in that machine that we can put out. We've got the torch. We've got the board boxes. If anyone would like to donate a whole bunch of money so we could get Specto, that would be fantastic. So yeah, so and the bowling center also it's got mini golf, it's got volleyball, it's got a bar, it's got good food. It's a nice bowling center, and it's like I said, it's like 10 minutes from campus. And Mike gives me carte blanche to the place, lets me do whatever I want. But now I know what you're talking about. Was handling both teams.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
what it was. See, I said Mike, and now it came back.
And I didn't have that one written down, so
right.
Yeah.
So Mike was handling. Mike took all the men's teams. He took the men, and the reason is Mike is one of my best friends, but Mike is a little harsh. He's a little blunt,
Okay.
and so I said, you know what, I'm gonna handle the women's teams. Now I'm at every practice, but during the tournaments, and because a lot of the tournaments are split up at two different houses, I handle the women's team.
Okay.
Next year, Mike is going to help us at practice, but he won't be traveling because he's just too busy at the bowling center. Sure. So I'll be hiring a new women's coach, and she will be handling the women's team, and I'm going to be taking over the men's team. And a lot of these NAIA tournaments that are strictly NAIA are we're all together. Men's and women's are all together. When we go to these tier ones, you're split up. You know, like the one in Wichita, the mid states, you're 10 miles apart and at two different times, and you can't be in two places at once. It's just impossible to do. So it takes some finagling, and we're not at a JV level yet. So some of these teams are taking, they're two varsity teams and two JV teams or three JV teams, and it's the logistics of it at some of these tournaments. I don't know how a lot of these guys do it, or girls. Or gals. I don't know how they do it. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. How big a part of the coaching or consulting in your program is Brad Miller, the touring pro?
Brad, at the start of the season, Brad was there quite a bit. And then Brad started bowling quite a bit, so he wasn't there as much. But when he is there, he's invaluable because he's a student and he gets it, and he can see little things because he works with Mike Jazz now a lot, and Jazz is fantastic. And so Brad can see little things. He's really good with the guys. He's really, really good with the guys. So it's, when Brad's there, he helps out quite a bit. Sure. It's just getting Brad in town is part of the problem.
Yeah, no kidding. So in July, you announced that your teams reached a sponsorship agreement with Storm. How did that all come about, and what do they do for the student athletes?
Well, it came about through several different channels. I've always been associated with Storm in one way or another since the very beginning of Storm. I tested balls for them, when they had one ball. So and Bill Chrisman used to bring the balls down in a van, and he'd stop at the showboat, and we'd all drill them up and throw them. So I've always been kind of associated with Storm. So when I took the job, and I knew that I know budgets aren't going to be big, and equipment is a big part of your budget, but travel eats up most of your budget.
Sure.
So I called Steve Klemkin, who I've known since he was 14 years old in Vegas, and I said, hey, if I do this, can we work out something? And he said, yeah, we'll see what we can do. And so I had to fill out the resume for my program, and it's really great that we even got any kind of deal at all because we're a first year program, and it helps out. It helps out with the equipment, and and we don't abuse it at all. It just helps out. And Storm's always been great with helping collegiate bowlers. All the manufacturers are really good with helping the collegiate bowlers.
Sure. So August 30th arrives. It's your first practice, and Walter Ray Williams Jr. is there.
Yeah, that was I'm really, I mean, I'm friends with Walter, but I'm really good friends with his wife.
Ah,
And with Fancy, I've known Fancy forever and ever. And she called me up. She goes, "Hey, Walter's driving through to the U.S. Open, and he wants to watch your kids bowl." I went, "Okay, yeah, just the greatest bowler of all time. Okay, fine."
Yeah.
So he shows up, and I only had a couple. My kids are young. They're 18,
Mhm.
17. I got one that just turned 18. Uh, and some of these girls, they hadn't never really bowled competitive. They have no idea who Walter is.
Yeah.
But I had a couple guys, and one of the girls was like, "Oh my God, their eyes are bugging out of their head. That's Walter Ray Williams." And he was great. He came down. He gave each kid a quick little lesson, showed them what they were doing wrong or right or whatever, and answered questions. And it was great. It was really cool. It was very cool of him to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great way to kick things off.
Yep.
Um, Tell me about your first tournament, late September, Midland Warrior Open in Omaha. What was it like to, to make that history, to be
Gosh,
in your role in that first tournament?
it was so much fun. I've never had that much fun not throwing a bowling ball in my life. It was so much fun. The kids, we started out bowling against St. Mary's University, which is just up the road in Leavenworth, Kansas, and they're a first year program too. And
Oh,
we all started out with Baker, I believe. It was 16 games of Baker, but it was head to head match play.
mhm.
So it was 2 games of Baker against each team. And we won our first two. We won our first match. And, it was against St. Mary's, and it was one of us had to win that.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. And we won it, and we were just, oh my God, this is so much fun. Let's do this again. So we
Yeah.
go to the next pair, and we won that one. So now
Wow.
we're 2-0. We beat I think Kansas Wesleyan or something, and they're a good team.
Mhm.
And we're 2-0. I go, this cannot be happening. And the guys are down at the other end, and they lost their first one, but then they beat Midland,
Mhm.
who's they were hosting the tournament. They're great. They're really good.
Yeah.
So the guys beat them. And Mike's texting me. I'm down at one end. Mike's at the other end. He's texting me. He goes, "We just beat Midland." I go. I texted him back. I go, "Well, they must have missed more spares than we did." So. And then I just remember it was just a blast. The kids were having such a good time, and it was just so much fun. I looked down and go, "You guys want to do this again tomorrow?" And they're like, "Yeah, we want to do this again." It was great. Now since then we've had some ups and downs, but my kids right now they just love getting in the van and going to bowl. They just think that's a blast,
Yeah.
and we're having a good time with it. We
Mhm.
really are. Next year there's going to be some different rules in place. There's going to things are going to be different because I only had 5 on each team. Well, I'm not gonna I'm going to have a bigger roster, so nobody's going to get all that playing time like they got last year.
Sure.
So it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to have a different mindset about it too.
Yeah. And that comes about because you've done some recruiting now. Has the fact that you've got these top ranked teams like Wichita State, like Newman, Baker, kind of in your backyard come up during recruiting, or are you guys looking for different players in different parts of Kansas or even the country?
Well, I'm a realist. I'm not going to get the kids that are going to go to Wichita State. It's not going to happen. If a kid wants to go to Wichita State and Wichita State wants them, that's where they're going. I'm
Yeah.
not, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to, sway them to Avila. It's just not going to happen. But I'm looking where I look is, I want every kid in Missouri. That's my goal is to get every kid in Missouri. Now I've been very lucky. Next year one from Ohio that's coming. Uh, I've got 2 from right here in Kansas City, 3 from right here in Kansas City, couple on the girls' side. There's a one in Omaha on the girls' side that I'm really want to get. So I'm not. I would love to expand, as far as I can. But right now, I'm really just concentrating on the Midwest and, closer to me. To me, if there's a kid here in Kansas City, and we got a pretty good junior program here.
Mhm.
If there's a kid in Kansas City that wants to bowl in college, there's no reason why I can't get them,
Mhm.
unless they absolutely want to go out of state. And I get that,
Sure.
I understand. But if they want to stay in town and they want to bowl, Avila is the place you want to go.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's like I said, and Baker and Ottawa and these other schools that are around us, we're the only school that's in a city.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a draw. For some people, it's not a draw. But for some, for a lot of people, it is a draw. We're in a fairly large city.
Yeah.
Ottawa's way out, way out. Baker's way out. Uh, so you kind of have to play that up when you're recruiting. Is that
Sure.
we're in a major city.
Yeah. You obviously believe you're going to have more talent next year. Things are going to be better. Cheryl says that you're knowledgeable about the sport. Within a few years, your team will be very competitive. Tell me about what coaching has taught you about yourself.
Oh man, patience. Uh, my wife will tell you, my kids will tell you that I'm not, big on patience. But this has taught me a lot of patience. You have to look. You have to look at the whole kid and what they're going through, and how you want them to. You have to figure out how to coach them individually to make a great team. And there's a lot of personalities, and you got to figure out who you can tease and who you can't tease, and uh, and that's the fun part. And uh, it's like I said, they all know how to bowl. It's just fine tuning what they do. That it's just fine tuning how to read lanes at this level, what ball to go to. Physically, honestly, uh, you know, you don't have time to give each one of them an individual lesson every time, and you can't do it while they're bowling.
Right.
You can't do it while they're competing. So you're managing is what you're doing. You're keeping their head in the game, and that's what I try to do is just keep them focused.
Yeah. So where do they go from here? What's the next tournament? What's I guess what's your plan for them moving forward?
Our next tournament is in Hastings, Nebraska, on the I think the end of January, last weekend of January, and then we're off a week, and then we go to Lawrence, Kansas, which will be great because I don't have to get a hotel for them. It's awesome. It saves me a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
And then the next weekend or the weekend after that, I can't remember, is our final conference championship in Fremont, Nebraska, and that'll be us and St. Mary's and Ottawa and Kansas Wesleyan, Midland, uh, Hastings, and I'm gonna we were just there in Sioux City, Morningside,
Uh,
and those are the 17. We're kind of a mixed conference, and whoever wins that gets to go to the NAI championships.
ah, okay.
So that's everybody's goal.
Sure.
That's our goal. That's my AD's goal is to eventually get to the NAI championships.
Yeah. How about for you as far as the future is concerned? I mean, in competing in bowling yourself, are you still competing? Are you in leagues? Are you in tournaments? What are you doing these days
No, I
and
haven't.
moving
I
forward?
haven't bowled in 2 years.
Ah,
I bowled like 3 games last summer. No, at the start of the semester, I bowled like 2 or 3 games. I've got a really bad hip, and my back is not what it used to be. But I want to start bowling again. I've been going to therapy and chiropractor and all that stuff. So I want to start bowling again. I miss it. But as far as like tournaments, no, I'm done bowling tournaments. But I like bowling league. I enjoy it. I enjoy it for the social aspect of it. But as far as tournaments go, my buddies try to get me to go. There's a huge tournament down here called the Greater Ozark Open, and it's in Springfield, Missouri. And I was fortunate enough to win all events in 04. I mean, that was a long time ago. And that's always a fun tournament. We went, and the same group of guys went there for years. And, we all got older and families and all that stuff. And COVID really killed it for us. And so I'd like to, if this ever gets back to normal, I'd like to go back to that tournament and bowl it, because I had a lot of fun and I actually made a lot of money down there. So it brings back great memories, and I like that area too.
Yeah. Cool. We have got a bunch of comments that I want to get to. Some of them are from people I know, and some are from people you know. Jim Lucas is Mr. Chip Magnet. He says, "Bro, where's Maxie?" And I don't know what that means, Jim. If you're still on, you should let me know so I can decipher this code. Let's see. Rocky Harrison says he finally made the live show, which is great. I don't know if you know Rocky.
I do not.
Okay, I think he's from the Milwaukee area. I could be wrong on that. Cheryl has been watching, says Wagner's 66 and a half lanes was her favorite bowling center when she was out on tour. Great to know.
Cheryl I'll tell you what, Cheryl was one of the best competitors you ever saw. She was a bulldog. She could bowl on anything.
Yeah.
And if the shot was on the gutter, you didn't have a chance against Cheryl. That's how good she was. She was really, really good. Yeah. And she always bowled good at that place.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's a smaller place now. Like Jim says, 26 now, 26 lanes, 26. Who is Kasaya Leopold?
No idea.
Is that somebody you know? No?
No idea.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to somebody I know you know, and that's Steve
I
Clemson.
do.
So he wants to know how it feels to know that you have Marsha Klemkin's dream job.
Well, because I know that it's Marsha Klemkin's dream job, it feels fantastic.
Just for spite, right?
Right. No. I know she's always wanted to do this, and Marsha still is a great bowler. Bowled on tour for a while, for several years, and bowled at the University of Florida. And she's always wanted to do this. And if she ever, quits teaching, she'd be perfect for this. Absolutely perfect for this.
Cool.
Well, I give her my job.
And he also says, "Long live the boat."
Steve and I but that's how far we go back. Steve's first 300 game he ever shot was at the Showboat.
Oh, wow.
In high school bowling.
Okay.
I was there. I actually saw it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, Steve's not a Las Vegas native. Steve was born in Minnesota, but he grew up in Las Vegas, and one of the best bowlers to ever come out of Vegas ever. It's a shame he's not in the Las Vegas Bowling Hall of Fame, because he should be.
Yeah. And a fantastic podcaster along with Tim Berg. They do the above180.com podcast, the Storm Collegiate Spotlight, which I listen to all the time. It's a great show. Check it out if you have the chance. Fluffy the Bowler says, "Except dealing with me."
That's my boy, Evan.
Ah, okay.
That's my boy, Evan Siraj. Let me tell you a story about Evan.
Yeah.
He's a great kid, fantastic kid. Evan, I found Evan on Facebook. He had commented on another kid that I was recruiting, but he's too young. He's like a sophomore in high school or something like that. Okay. And he was getting ready to go to junior gold. And Evan commented, take it one shot at a time, good luck, blah, blah, blah. So I got on Messenger and I said to Evan, I said, and this was late summer, so that's like July, whenever gold is. It's like July. And season starting, in end of September, I got to fill these teams.
Yeah.
And I sent Evan a message that said, here's the deal. Here's your scholarship and a starting spot. You in?
Wow.
Next thing I know, here's Evan in the car with his mom, They came up to Kansas City. He bowled like a game and a half for me, and I said, "I'm fine with it. You look good." He doesn't use his thumb, but he's not a two-hander, so he just palms it.
Oh, okay.
And or two-finger, but
Yeah.
but he throws it great.
Mhm.
When he's on, that kid strikes like crazy.
Sure.
And the next thing I know, he's there taking a tour of the school. I've got a letter of intent. He signs it. He's an Eagle. It literally happened in a day.
Wow.
And he's a great kid. And here's the other thing about Evan is Evan has lost. He'll correct me, I'm sure, but he's lost like 160 pounds or something like that. And he's a hard worker. I can't say enough about him. He's just a great kid.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
well, congratulations
he's
to him, and of course, future success in college bowling and afterwards for sure. Christy Siraj says, "Thanks for recruiting my son. He's had the time of his life this year. Looking forward to next season."
Fantastic. He's in.
This is easy, right?
Right.
And Rocky does say, yes, Milwaukee, one of John Magna's students.
Oh, okay.
And Magna was on one of our previous shows. Thanks again for watching, Rocky. Really appreciate that. Had a great conversation with John. Again, check it out. It's on one of our previous episodes. This is the point in the show where we go off the sheet with you, and that's where I ask you to challenge somebody else to come on. And skill level is kind of out the window. We're talking about people who are passionate about the sport of bowling and who have a unique story to tell. So, Paul Wolf, who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fef?
Well, I think it's kind of obvious. I am challenging Steve Klemkin. His bowling story is besides being, everybody knows he's a Hall of Famer and what he's won, but they don't know how hard the guy worked. I've never seen a kid work that hard to get that good, and he got so good at a very young age, and he stayed that way. And he's one of the more knowledgeable people in the game. He's just done everything in the game, and he's just one of my best friends. And so I'm calling out Steve Plumpkin to be on Bowling with the Fef. And if you don't, we're done. We're done, Steve.
Well, this will be free publicity for the podcast, and you can't go wrong with that, right?
Steve's all about that. He's a marketing guy.
Yeah.
He's all about that.
Yeah. Well, Steve, look me up. You can DM me on Facebook or email bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. We'd love to have you on the schedule. We'll certainly talk about the podcast and your bowling story, and we'll let you, take some veiled jabs at Paul if you really want to.
I'm sure he will too.
Paul, if there are prospective college students, people in high school who are part of bowling programs or are interested in finding out more about your program in Avila, where do they find you?
They can go to avilaathletics.com, or they can go to www.avila.edu. And that is the easiest way to get a hold of me. Just go to the athletics site and click on bowling, and you'll find the easiest way to get a hold of me. And you can get go to my direct email, which is paul.wolf@avila.edu, and I'll answer anything you need to know.
I don't usually plug this show as a lost and found, but it looks like Cheryl has Evan's sweatshirt.
I'll get it from you when we're in Lawrence, Cheryl, I promise.
There you go. Paul, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and continued success to you and your team. Best wishes on the second half of the college bowling season.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Pat.
You betcha. Everyone be just and fear not. We will hopefully see you on the live broadcast of the stepladder of the Chippewa Valley Match Games live from Wagner's in Eau Claire on January 9th. Have a happy new year, and we'll see you soon.